Hello, and thank you for joining us at Roaring Rivers of Grace. You can check us out at roaringriversofgrace.com for more information, or if you'd like to send us a prayer request or just send me a question, there's a contact us and a prayer request button there on the website as well. There's also a donate button if you'd like to give to the ministry. We would certainly appreciate your support. Well, we are in the middle of a series called Viewing the Bible Through Our Own Eyes. And in this series, we're going through the 7 covenants of the Bible and reading the Bible through the lens of the 7 covenants. Today, we'll be talking about the Noahic covenant, and we've already covered the Adamic and the Edenic covenant. So if you weren't here for those, please send me an email through the contact button on roaringriversofgrace.com, and I'll be happy to send you that link to that recording. So let's get right into it. For the sake of time, I won't go over each of these in detail as we have in previous weeks. So I'll just put these up here for you to take a screenshot. And if you would like more in-depth teaching on these 7 vital keys of biblical interpretation using biblical hermeneutics, which is a fancy term for properly interpreting ancient documents. These are the 7 hermeneutical principles that we use. And you can go back and watch previous weeks where we discuss those in depth. The Bible is a book of covenants, 7 in all to be exact, and if we understand the stipulations of each covenant and their progression leading to the last one being the final covenant, the new covenant, the Messianic covenant, we can get a pretty clear picture of the heart and nature of God. Of course, the opposite of this is true as well. If we don't interpret the Bible through these 7 covenants, we can get a misconstrued or incorrect interpretation of the heart and nature of God, which is very common in the Western church today. The 7 covenants we'll be discussing in this series are the Edenic covenant, the Adamic covenant, the Noahic covenant, which we'll cover today, the Abrahamic, the Mosaic or Old Covenant, also known as the Law, the Davidic covenant, and the Messianic covenant, which is the final covenant that we are a part of today. So today, very briefly, what is a covenant? A covenant is an agreement between 2 parties. It is constituted through promises made by each party with stipulated benefits of blessings and curses based upon the condition of keeping said promises. It is usually ratified by the shedding of blood. It may also be conditional or unconditional, which you saw on the previous screen. If you didn't catch those, go back. If you're watching this on the replay, you can rewind that and see which ones are conditional and which ones are unconditional. Conditional meaning God sets forth conditions for man, and if man follows the conditions, they get the blessings. If they don't, they get curses. Unconditional meaning God is going to fulfill that covenant regardless of man's actions. In a nutshell, the understanding of biblical covenants is paramount to understanding the understanding of the character and integrity of God, as we mentioned a moment ago. Most evangelical churches today in the West do not recognize the value of biblical covenants because covenantalism, or reading the Bible through the lens of the 7 covenants, which is what we're doing, and what the early church did, has been replaced by dispensationalism, which brought to a close the value of God dealing with man through the covenants. Today, we'll be discussing the 3rd covenant, the Noahic covenant, which is the age of human government. So upon Noah exiting the ark after the flood, God made his 3rd covenant with man, the Noahic covenant. We see this in Genesis 8:20 through 9:17. This covenant was unconditional. In this covenant, God is beginning again with mankind, the flood destroying everyone except Noah and his family. Because of extreme wickedness, God sought to replenish the earth through Noah because he found grace in God's eyes. We see this in Genesis, not get, Genesis 6:8. Looks like I was a victim of autocorrect. Like the covenants before, the Adamic and the Edenic covenant, this covenant contains promises to man and responsibilities required of man. However, the requirements of man were not conditional. So what were those promises? Number 1, God would not curse the ground any longer or smite every living thing. He would not destroy the earth again by global flooding, Genesis 9:11. There's that get book in the Bible again. Number 3, the promise was that the seasons with day and night would not cease. We see this in Genesis 8 and 22. God would give the covenant sign of the rainbow as his promise. These promises are valid and continue regardless of man's conduct. But God also has requirements for man to follow that he gave to Noah and his family. Number one, man was to remultiply and to replenish the earth. We see this in Genesis 9, 1 and 7. Number two, man could eat meat, but could not eat blood from any source. We find this in Genesis 9 and 4. Number three, man was to exercise capital punishment upon man and beast. We see this in Genesis 9 and 5. God also made two other statements related to this covenant. Number one, that animals would fear men. We see this in Genesis 9 and 2. And number two, man is now meat-eating, carnivorous. We see this in Genesis 9 and 3. Prior to this time, man was a vegetarian. He only ate from the plants, but not meat. In this covenant, we discover God's destruction of mankind because of a seared conscience and overwhelming wickedness. It was not that God did not love man, but because of his love, he would not allow the human race to perpetuate outside of their purpose. And of course, that purpose is to be in God's own image. God made Adam and in his image and in his likeness. That is our purpose, to be in God's image. Anything outside of that is to be the negative form of that image, hamartia, which is where we get the word sin from the Greek. And all that simply means is not your actions, it's not your behavior. It is when you see yourself and therefore act as if you are outside of your purpose of God, being in God's image. You believe yourself to be not made in God's image. Therefore, you act like you're not. You act like the opposite of that. That's what hamartia, or sin, really means. And so the earth was filled with people who were acting as if they believed that they were outside or made outside of God's image and likeness. They were acting like animals, like beasts. And so the destruction of mankind was so that they wouldn't continue to perpetuate in this state. And that's the whole purpose of the flood. It is within this covenant that God begins to give man rules to govern himself. Thus, this is the age of human government. So that concludes our very short and brief study of the Noahic covenant, the third covenant. There's a whole lot more there that, of course, is in the Bible that we could get into. But for the sake of time, I'm going to refer you to the Center for Transformational Development, ctdempowers.org. And they have an extensive set of classes, biblical studies program that you can take from them at a very affordable rate. And they go into a lot more detail into the topics that we're discussing. So check that out. I think you will thoroughly enjoy that if you want more information on these 7 covenants. Visit us at roaringriversofgrace.com if you would like more information. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, prayer requests, or you'd like to donate, just click on one of the appropriate buttons there at roaringriversofgrace.com, and be happy to try and answer those questions for you, or most certainly pray for your prayer requests. So just thanks to everybody for watching. Please join us every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central. I promise they're not always this short. We usually go into a good 30 to 45 minutes of teaching time each week. Also, you can join us on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central U.S. time, where we don't really have Bible study. We just fellowship with one another. So we would certainly encourage you to join us on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central time. We would love to have you. Again, if you would like to see any of the previous week's teachings leading up to this point, please do go to roaringriversofgrace.com, click the contact button, and let me know what you would like. And I'd be happy to send you those links. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.